I found that when I was running some of my DJ lighting, which is LED-based lighting, that it seemed that was draining those batteries much faster than if I was running my sound system and such. And I thought that was the darndest thing. And I was wondering, I just would have assumed that my sound system would draw more. But why would lighting be a bigger draw for electricity than the sound system?
Well, I think it isn't always necessarily. Here's the "it depends" answer, right? But in the good old days,
35 minutes to get to it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, woohoo! In the good old days of touring, lighting used to be on 400 amp disconnects. Big, massive 400 amp feeders, because all that incandescent lighting just chewed up so much power, and audio was on a 200. And nowadays, we can run generally everything on a 200 because everything's so much more efficient. The audio is more efficient. The lighting's more efficient. I mean, everything is just, so much more efficient. In that spirit, though, there are things that are still significant current draws. Fog machines be one. They have, big heaters in them, right? That's going to draw way more power than LED lighting or audio. And there are some really powerful lights that, even though they're LED, they do, consume a lot of power. And we actually did an interesting show several years ago, as I recall, something like, can you get 1,000 watts from 100 watts or something? But anyway, it's a cool show people should watch about how much power does a 1,000-watt speaker really use? It's not 1,000 watts, really. Now, that doesn't mean you're being lied to, but, it means marketing is taking full advantage of the fact that you like a lot of numbers with zeros. But the reality is you don't listen to watts anyway. So go watch that show. I was one of my favorite shows because I thought we really did some, it wasn't really investigative journalism. It was simply just engineering that everybody already knew on this side of the fence. But, but it was cool to be like, hey, everybody, look at this. You're sort of being lied to a little bit, but only because you like it. You want to be lied to. You're like, yeah, tell us how many watts it is. Oh, for the love.
Yeah, because you want to be lied to.
Yeah, you do. You do. I mean, I'll tell you, and I've spent 30 years trying to educate people, and I love that the dialogue has shifted. I feel like that I have, I want to toot my own horn here, but I do feel like there has been a shift. There's been a change that started with a conversation with Ryan Berger at Mobile Beat going back about 20 years ago. And I said, we got to change this. People are just eagerly lining up to eat up the lies. And I said, we got to just blow the lid off this and go, stop it with this, nonsense. And the whole tenor of the conversations on the forums and the tenor at trade shows, I feel like has changed. And maybe it's just around me because of the circles I'm in, but I feel like that's maybe one thing that I would feel good about is giving power, pun intended, since we're doing a power show, but giving power to the people. Giving the knowledge to our viewers to make informed purchasing decisions, so they don't have to be lied to if they don't want to. Anyway, that didn't answer your question.
Yeah.
But I think it really just comes down to what you're running for lighting and what that draws, and then what your sound equipment draws, and the quantities of each. And we talked about this a little bit earlier in this segment with the kilowatt, or something, a meter. This is just a really easy way to measure amp draw, and which is what you undoubtedly did, something like that. And you said, wow, look at that. This draws more than that.
Yeah.
The why would really come down to the individual device. So I sort of dodged all that because I felt like it was kind of irrelevant, even though it was your question.
Dodged the whole question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, John.
But it seemed as we were.
Do you want to be lied to? I'll lie to you.
Well, you could. But I think that one of the aspects, though, is most of our lighting does not have a level of capacitor in it, and many of our speaker amplifiers have capacitors in there. And I'm wondering if those capacitors play a role in being able to have a little bit lower consistent draw for the audio, and it can handle the spikes better, where the lighting doesn't have those highs and lows. It's more of just a consistent draw. So without the capacitors, it's just always pulling that much, where the speakers can pull this much because sometimes it's quieter, sometimes it's louder, but it can pull.
Well, we had a great question just come in from a viewer who's a good friend, and I think we should address it. So I'll throw it in. But I want to say that I think you're right on the money, and that's why I think people should watch that show about getting power how much can you get 1,000 watts out of 100? Because that's exactly why. Without giving away the crux of that show, you should still really watch it because I worked very hard on some graphs and charts. But anyway, I know everybody's like, "Ooh, graphs and charts, hold me back." I was, no, come on, they're good. But there's a thing called crest factor in music. We're not always using 1,000 watts. In fact, very, very rarely are we using 1,000 watts. So we can have this lower level draw that's stored in those capacitors and other, devices that allow us to feed surge power out, peak power out to our driver when needed. And I think you're right on the money there.
And for those of you wondering, I'm going to put the link to that show in the chat.
I haven't watched it, I think, since we did it, but I just remember it being one of my favorite shows.
It was, for those wondering, so everybody, it's 2019. We did that one back 5 years, literally almost 5 years ago, May 14th, 2019.
Oh, wow. So I haven't watched it. I don't remember. I guess everybody can watch it. And if you're like, you know what, Ben, that show actually kind of sucked. Let me know. Just send us a message and be like, hey, I don't know why you remember it so fondly because it was terrible. But I felt good about that show. I felt like we did.
We covered some good information on that one. That's one. There's some that you forget just because we've done similar versions, but that one because it was
over 300 now. I think right. We've done over 300 shows.
We've got a lot of them out there.
That's bonkers. That's nuts.